Okay, this is now the 5 minute tarot for the 11th of June 2017. And I'd like to tell you today a couple of things about how it's not exactly a method that I use, but it's more two things that help me come up with, it's not come up with meanings, it's more like have ideas, or it kind of expands my understanding of a card, or maybe gives me something that I can tell a questioner to make a card more meaningful, we can say. I think it's kind of hard to describe it in advance, but by the end of the video, you'll know what I mean. Okay, so the first was, it had to do with a few days ago, I happened to watch a video, or the beginnings of a video on YouTube, and it was a documentary biography of David Gilmour, who is the lead guitarist and vocalist with the Pink Floyd. So near the beginning, David Gilmour lives in Surrey in England. He's got a house there, but he's also got a houseboat, which is also a recording studio on the River Thames. It's docked on the water, and I don't think it can move because it was built like a barge, but it's glass, and he turned it into a recording studio, and that's where they recorded the Division Bell and various other albums. So how he got that was, there was one day a friend was driving him past or along a road, and he happened to notice the barge or the boat in the water. So he said to the friend to stop for a minute, and he looked at it and he liked the look of it. And then the next day, I think he said the next day, he was at the dentist in England, and he was in the waiting room, and he picked up, there's an English magazine called Country Life, which I don't know if he would ever buy it, if he would ever come in contact with Country Life, but he happened to be in the dentist's waiting room. And, you pick up a magazine, and he opened it, and there in Country Life was a photograph of the boat, the houseboat, and it was for sale. The one he had seen the day before that he really liked. That I don't know if he fell in love with it, but he liked it. And so he saw it happened to be for sale, and he bought it. So it's a bit like, which card is that? I heard him tell the story, and I thought that's a good example of, if you've got the Wheel of Fortune, let's say, and you want to say to the person or the questioner that things are going to come together and it's going to work out, and you don't know maybe how it's going to work out, but it is. And you don't want to say it's meant to be, or some kind of vague expression like that. But I'm probably going to use that story sometime when it's appropriate. Not every time that the Wheel of Fortune comes up, because it could be another card or another combination of cards. But it gives me something to talk about that actually happened, about how you're doing what you're doing in life, and you have thoughts, and things happen or things don't happen, and then suddenly things just click, and you end up with something that you really wanted, that you hadn't been thinking about. So maybe it's a point that this is what can happen in life, or maybe this is what always happens in life, only we don't understand it, or we don't appreciate it, or we get in the way of bigger things happening, or different parts of our life coming together and producing something that we hadn't really imagined. So I think when you're going about your daily life and talking to people, if you keep the tarot in the back of your mind, you'll notice for yourself useful stories that you can tell people, or that you can use to illustrate the meaning of a card or the meaning of a combination of cards. So that's it doesn't even have to be the Wheel of Fortune. It could be some other card. But I like the idea of things falling into place naturally. And David Gilmour didn't really have to do anything for this thing to fall into his lap. Okay, the other thing is, I watched I seem to spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos, but there was one that I saw about a watercolor painter I think he's in Long Island in New York. So he went to the Pratt Institute, which is a well-known painting or art school. So he talked about how he painted his grandmother a few times among other people, and he said that by painting the grandmother and I guess the grandfather and the grandmother's family. And it's interesting as well because he talked about on Long Island, there are old people that he paints who are just old, like in the past, old people used to be old people. Now they're old grandmothers are trying to be hot grandmas, right? So it's a bit like maybe nowadays to some extent, but there wasn't the same pressure some years ago for old people to be young or for old people to be less than old, you know what I mean? So anyway, he's talking about how painting his grandmother means that art not only brings us together with history, but it makes us look at things in our contemporary era through a different lens. And I have to open this screen thing because I want word for what he said was seeing the world through the prism of a painting makes you see things with broader meanings. And that's what I think the connection is with the tarot. I immediately thought of a card, because a card is a little painting, a little illustration. But seeing the world through the prism of a painting or seeing the world through the prism of a tarot card makes you see things with broader meanings. So somebody's talking about a situation. I mean, going back a couple of days ago, what's the 17-year-old going to do for a career? And so by taking the Hierophant, you're able to see his situation see it through a broader meaning, that his having a career or making a decision about what career to have isn't just about having a career. It's also about what type of person he's going to be, what type of people he's going to deal with, what's his attitude going to be? How is he going to spend his time as well? Because if he goes to college or university, he's going to have to spend time reading and studying and writing and communicating and thinking and talking with people and learning and maybe teaching. You know what I mean? So that and let me just read this, seeing life through the prism of a painting, or through the prism. And a prism, if you remember, you've got a prism, you've got a beam of light hitting the prism, and the prism separates it into a rainbow. So you've got one beam of light that suddenly becomes 7 different colored beams of light. So looking at a card, seeing it as a painting or as a little picture, it's a prism. So it takes the one idea, let's say, that the one idea of the question that the person has, and it splits it into multiple different ideas or possibilities, all of which are in harmony with each other, because it's a prism and it's a complete rainbow. And it gives us the visible spectrum, I think that's a word. So it makes you see these things with broader meanings. So again, I watched David Gilmour and something clicks about maybe the Wheel of Fortune. I watched this video about this watercolor artist, and he talks about the prism and the picture, and it gives me an idea of what's actually going on with the tarot. And maybe if somebody is arguing about the tarot later, or not that I have arguments with people, but if somebody wants to know what's the tarot good for, I can maybe tell them about a prism and how you've got a certain situation and you look at it and it seems like a situation, but by by seeing it through the prism of a tarot card, you can see multiple things happening, or multiple possibilities, or more than, or understand that this one thing that you think is actually a variety of things. So maybe the reason you can't solve the problem is because you're seeing it as a single thing. Whereas if you can see it as truly as multiple effects or multiple streams, then you can deal more constructively with each individual stream or each individual effect, or maybe make some changes and solve the problem, because you're not seeing it as one problem, you're seeing it through the prism. Okay, so if that works for you, then it's been a good video. But I couldn't quite explain that at the beginning. Anyways, if you have your own experiences, write them all down. That's the other thing. When you notice something, make a note of it somewhere in your tarot notebook. Something that clicked, that made something different, that made your understanding broader or different, or it's an example that you might use one day when you're talking about a particular card or in a certain situation with somebody. Okay, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.